Over the last year, we've seen a change in the mood of the software buying public and growing anger towards predatory software subscriptions. And while a rapidly diminishing number of companies offer a true lifetime purchase, this shift in the public mood has opened the doors for companies like On1, who are prepared to step up their game. On1 first released PhotoRAW back in 2016, and while its lifetime purchase does come with the usual caveats, you can use the version you buy forever for a one-off fee, unlike Lightroom, which will stop working shortly after you cease paying your subscription. Over the last 8 years, PhotoRAW has continued to mature in terms of speed and features, and the devs have simultaneously embraced the kinds of AI tools that competition, like DxO, have ignored. The question is this: have the developers done enough to make PhotoRAW a truly viable alternative to Adobe Lightroom Classic? Is it time to kick Adobe into touch and support an app created by a small independent team of photography-loving coders? Like your histogram, the truth lies somewhere in between the highlights and the shadows. I know the internet's given us all the attention span of a coke-sniffing Springer Spaniel, so here's the TLDR. If you're looking for feature parity with Lightroom Classic, then On1 supplies on pretty much all levels. But if you're looking for quality parity, then it unfortunately falls short in several key areas. Here's the headlines. It's very much a mixed bag. The new AI tools are interesting but erratic. The masking remains clunky. The raw demosaicing is poor. Asset management is excellent. And the new match color tool is a winner. You may decide that, on balance, any shortcomings are not enough to put you off spending your money on PhotoRAW. And I encourage you to find out for yourselves. Get the old 30-day trial, try out your personal post-processing workflow and see if it works for you. That is ultimately all that matters. Now, before we get into it, this is not a sponsored review, and I'm not a member of On1's affiliate scheme, or indeed any affiliate scheme. On1 did supply me with a serial for the software so that I could fully test it without stressing about the trial running out, but that is all. I tested the Mac 2025 version on my M2 MacBook Pro, but there is a Windows version also available. Chapter links are included below, so feel free to skip to the features that interest you the most. Okay, let's get into it, and since this is often touted as a Lightroom alternative, we need to talk about asset management first. Like many Adobe Lightroom alternatives, PhotoRAW 2025 enables you to ingest your images into a local catalog or to simply browse your directories in your local file system. Adding photos to your catalog isn't essential, but it makes searches faster and enables you to create smart folders and to view photos offline. PhotoRAW has excellent asset management tools, offering a clean, sensible, and functional system that does a great job of getting out of the way when you need it to. New in this release is the addition of stacks. This is a must-have for me, since I shoot pretty much everything in bracketed mode, and it's great to have it in PhotoRAW. It is, however, missing one important feature found in Lightroom Classic, which is the auto stack. Being able to group photos together in stacks is a lot less useful when you have to manually create them, but hopefully this is something that they can address in a later version of the software. Rating, color coding, picking and rejecting photos is simple and fast. There is even an AI keyword facility, something which requires a third-party plugin in Lightroom. It's not the best AI keyworder I've used, but it does augment the broader metadata search. There are two ways of looking after your photographs. You can import them into a database-driven catalog, which I've done here. This is my main photo drive. It's indexed all of my images. Alternatively, if you don't want to do that, you could just browse your file system, open up any directory you want, and just browse them that way without importing them. If I click on an image, I can give them a star rating, either from the icons or by using the keyboard shortcuts. And you can, of course, turn on the old auto advance so you can quickly skip through your photos and choose the keepers, the ones you want to spend a bit more time processing. Other notable features in this fully featured asset management is the very Lightroom-tastic search tools up here that enable you to drill down to find the photos you're looking for. We've got a text search tool, which searches in things like captions and keywords. We've got attributes, which are things that you give the photographs a star rating, or your color attributes. You can search on faces if you index them. And we've also got the same kind of metadata search you get in Lightroom, where you can search on things like the ISO and the file type. Over on the right-hand side here, we have shortcuts to the Pano, HDR focus, and time-lapse features. There's also a funky little smart organizer tool which enables you to search for images based on similar appearance. So, big thumbs up for asset management. Let's talk about raw processing now, since that is, of course, the core of any photo editor. And on that front, there is mixed news. There is a comprehensive array of processing sliders in here, equal to pretty much any of the competition, along with a fully featured effects engine for adding color, tone, curve, contrast, and texture adjustments. That is the good news. The bad news is that the Demosaicing engine, the algorithm that the app uses to decode that raw image data into pixel information for you to edit, lags behind the competition. Allow me to demonstrate. Here's a photograph. I deliberately chose this because it had blown out highlights, and I edited this in On1 PhotoRAW, and I used every trick in the book I could find to try and pull back that sky data. So if you come down and look, you can see I've got the highlights down. I tried lowering the exposure. I also did a local sky adjustment to try and bring it down even further, but I could not bring it back. So let's go into browse mode, and I'm going to show you the same shot processed in DxO PhotoLab using all its different tricks. Let's put this into compare mode, and you can see, let's zoom in on the problem area. Let's go in a little bit further than that. Not that far, hold on. There we go, that's good. Now compare the two. This is the same identical raw file, and PhotoLab 8 has found this data. There is pixel data information here. It hasn't magicked it up. It's not filled it. The information was there in the raw file, and DxO's Demosaicing engine pulled it out, and we can see it. And unfortunately, On1's Demosaicing engine is not as powerful. It couldn't find this information. And so if you want to get the very best, the most out of your raw files, then you need to look long and hard at the Demosaicing engine that's built into the software. In previous editions of PhotoRAW, I found that these sliders weren't officially targeted. So for instance, the shadow slider affected pretty much the entire tonal range of the image, rather than just the bits on the left end of the histogram. Ditto the highlights. You're never going to get perfect separation of the beginning and end of the dynamic range of light, and nor would you want to, but other apps do a far better job of pinpointing the best band within which to modify pixel light intensity. The Brilliance AI tool is basically the same as the auto button in Lightroom, and I don't care how much smoke you blow up my arse about it. Yes, you can modify its global intensity, and yes, it also includes AI-generated adjustments such as no noise, but it's still just a slightly souped-up auto mode, not the cure for post-processing that some proponents of this app would have you believe. You can save a few seconds from doing the inevitable shadow boost and highlight drop and denoise, of course, but that's about it. New in PhotoRAW 2025 is the Edit Color tool, which is basically a clone of the Point Color tool in Adobe Lightroom. You add it from the Effects tab, click on Add Filter and Edit Color. The way this works is you can target a specific color or color range and then operate on the HSL, the hue, saturation, luminosity or lightness of that color range. So I'm going to click on the old eyedropper here and then I click on this branch here. This has got too much magenta or blue in it, and that's what I want to target. So as you can see, it selected this blue portion of the color range. I might increase that out slightly by taking these little grabbers out into the magenta and the green just to make it a slightly broader adjustment. I'm going to leave the feather the way it is. And the first thing I'm going to do is drag the old saturation slider down. I want to desaturate the image. And then I just want to move the hue over into the right to just cool it off. And as you can look at the image there, you can see we've taken away all that horrible kind of magenta toning on this tree trunk here. Here's the before and the after. PhotoRAW uses a combination of traditional and AI masks that have more in common, really, with something like Capture One than they do Lightroom Classic. There are broad region-based AI mask options such as sky, ground, and flora, along with traditional gradient, brush, luminosity, and depth masks. And then there are the point-and-click AI masking tools, Super Select and Quick Mask, which work along broadly similar lines. I can't say I'm a huge fan of the way that masks are implemented in PhotoRAW, and I got very mixed results when testing them, particularly the sky mask, which is fairly useless on anything other than shots of mountain ranges with a perfectly designed sky boundary. You'd be far better served using a luminosity mask for sky selections. They take a fraction of the time and are far more accurate than the AI implemented in this app. The AI-based point-and-click masks work okay when there are simple, obvious regions in a photograph, but it struggles when it gets even remotely complicated. For instance, when selecting the sky shown through behind some branches. It is also stupidly fiddly to select specific parts of a photo using that Super Select brush. And you find yourself making these micro adjustments with your mouse just to select a rock or a bit of a tree. I'm pretty sure On1 could spin the Super Select brush tool off into a reflex skill game for people who hate themselves. You can admittedly improve those Super Select masks by using the Refine brush, but it's a drawn-out and fiddly process with erratic outcomes that usually requires multiple undo and redos. I had far more luck using the traditional masking tools, particularly the brand new Depth mask, which enables you to create far more nuanced and much more useful masks in far less time. On1 already have a healthy batch of AI-based tools in their apps, including denoise and sharpening, masking, and the machine learning-based Brilliance AI. And to that, they have now added Generative Erase, Generative Crop, automatic dust removal, and power line removal. The Generative Erase tool can be used in two modes, either locally or using the cloud using Stability AI. The former is free and the latter costs $10 for 1,000 credits. The amount of credits you are charged for each removal depends entirely on how large an area you've chosen to mask out. If it's a small area, it might be as little as 3 credits, but removing a huge person or something from a shot might cost 3 times that. So basically, you're looking between 3 and 20 cents per removal. Just before I filmed this review, On1 released an update to PhotoRAW, which included a big update to Generative Remove. Evidently, there was some pushback to that original clunky implementation in terms of both interface and results, and I'm not at all surprised that they called everyone back from their post-launch vacation to revisit this. While the workflow is much better now, the central problem with the tool, namely the very low resolution and the AI's inability to match grain and color, persist. Here's an example of how the new Generative Remove in the 2025 02 build looks, and here's the local non-cloud remove by way of comparison. In terms of relative quality levels, I ran a series of removals on my usual suite of test photos and found that the Stability AI removals were about as good as Photoshop's. Yeah, that's great, isn't it? Unfortunately, both tools are only good enough for basic fixes, social media uploads and the like, because the replacement pixel data is far lower resolution than the surrounding image. There is no way you could use this tool, or Photoshop's for that matter, in a commercial setting. The locally generated AI removal was very hit and miss. If you're prepared to sit through about 20 undo redos, you could save yourself a few bucks because it does get there in the end. Generative Crop suffers from the same fundamental flaw as the Generative Remove. It's far too low resolution to be useful for anything other than novelty undertakings. In my test, the tool did a passable job of conjuring up the pixels that might exist beyond the photo frame, but it's so startlingly obvious where the real photo begins and ends that its real-world use seems highly unlikely and renders this tool utterly pointless. Not only is it very low resolution, but it also failed to match grain or color on my test shots. I got the best results when the background was out of focus or blurred on low aperture shots, for instance, and it sucked when used on images that were sharp from front and back. It's not all completely bad news for the generative AI stuff, though. The Powerline tool is more effective than the Dustblot tool, which always required follow-up fixes, but they're both solid additions to the apps which work consistently well. The Denoise and Sharpen algorithms aren't flagged as having received an update in this release, but in the name of completeness, I did put them through their paces too. The no noise algorithm is something of a blunt tool. Yes, it will remove noise from your photographs, but it will do so at the cost of nearly all the subtle background detail. In fact, you could emulate the look by simply applying an extremely strong Gaussian blur to your background. There are actually two 2024 Denoise models in PhotoRAW 2025, a high detail model and a standard model. The high detail model adds very noticeable artifacts to boundary points. Even if you drop the actual enhanced detail slider to 0, and I do not recommend it at all. The standard model is slightly better in that it doesn't suffer so badly from those boundary point artifacts, but it's simply not as good as either Lightroom Classic or PhotoLab 8 at actual noise removal. On a more positive note, amongst the newly released features in PhotoRAW is a tool that I thought would be gimmicky, that actually turned out to be excellent. One of my favourite features in On1 PhotoRAW 2025, without a doubt, is the Match Colour feature, which will forever put paid to the "How do I achieve this look" threads that you find on Reddit. Let me show you how it works. I've got a photo I took in London. Don't know if you can guess that from the image on the screen here. And just applied a little bit of Brilliance AI retouching to it. To add the Match Colour feature, go into Effects, Add Filter, and go to Match Colour. Now, there are some built-in references, some kind of novelty ones, the Mona Lisa and stuff like that. But what I did, I just went to Unsplash, typed in Cityscape, and downloaded anything that looked slightly different. All the looks, crushed blacks, orange and teal, you know, everything in between. And I can then apply the looks of that photograph, the post-processing that the photographer used to deliver the photograph to Unsplash, by simply clicking on it. If the effect is too strong for my taste, as it definitely is in this case, then you can dial back the opacity until you arrive at a look you like, or you can fine-tune it down here with the sliders. If you only want the color to be affected, you could dial back the luminosity, for instance. And it is a surprisingly effective tool. I thought it was going to be a bit of a novelty, but actually it isn't. It's quite clever the way it works. We've got this image here. You can see the reference photograph in the thumbnail, and you can get this kind of completely kind of grungy look if you like. We could dial down the color a little bit. This is a nicely implemented feature, and one that I see having great value for people when they're starting out, trying to find out what sort of post-processing look they favor for their photographs. I've been testing On1's PhotoRAW releases for a few years now, and there's no doubt that it is improving, which is more than I can say for some other prominent photo editors. Without a doubt, the best feature in PhotoRAW 2025 is the asset management. It's now every bit as good as Lightroom Classic, and in fact better in some ways, since it can browse local files, whereas everything has to be imported into the database in Lightroom Classic. I'm not a huge fan of the clunky processing workflow and the way that the filters and masks are managed. It's an often counterintuitive app, and even after using it for years, I regularly have to pause and think about where a particular tool is located, something I never have to do in Lightroom or PhotoLab. I also don't think it would be unreasonable to combine the old local adjustments into the Effects tab and just have one central location for all non-global tweaks. The app's core demosaicing needs improvement. I prefer if On1 focus on enhancing this fundamental feature in their next release, rather than following Luminar Neo's path of adding unnecessary AI tools. The AI masking isn't great, and I got far better results using the new depth mask and the old luminosity mask. Until they work out how to select anything other than extremely obvious elements in a photo, the masks will suck, no matter how impressive their names sound. The new Generative Remove is, to be frank, shit. But in On1's defense, Adobe's is a load of shit too. I simply don't see the point of this tool when what replaces your chosen selection is some low-resolution, pixelated, grainy-looking soup of bitmap pixels. The Generative Crop is useless too, probably more useless than the Remove tool, since you're inevitably dealing with a far larger area and therefore a far greater ratio of the photograph that ends up looking like you photocopied it on a 1972 Xerox 4000 and stuck it to the back of the original image with Gorilla Tape. The dust removal and power line removal tools are great, however, and can save a lot of protracted mucking about with clone tools. Can we have more stuff like this, please, guys? On1's denoise and sharpening game is not strong. Gets the job done if you're happy to obliterate the background detail, but that's about it. When I reviewed PhotoRAW 2024.5 about 6 months ago, I said we needed to be honest about inconsistencies and shortcomings in apps, even when they're created by small dev teams, because we're reviewing the app, not the company. I appreciate the fact that On1 have a minuscule team in comparison to Adobe's, but the fact is that smaller dev teams such as DxO or Pixelmator can come up with the goods. Pixelmator is a tiny team and they're so good that Apple just bought them. PhotoRAW 2025 has a lot going for it in terms of day-to-day photo management, but is badly let down by the fundamentals such as that subpar demosaicing and the convoluted masking tools. There needs to be a more nuanced approach to AI masks, because only Adobe's got properly close, and it is only close to a one-click solution for things like sky selections, and they employ several hundred software engineers to merely get to okay. I appreciate the fact that you can buy PhotoRAW outright rather than on subscription, but let's stop pretending that it'll work forever, because that single purchase only buys you updates to this 2025 edition, on whichever version you buy, not any subsequent major releases. And again, this complaint isn't an issue that's unique to On1. I'm not singling them out. Everyone's at it. If you're looking for a rock-solid asset manager, then the $100 price tag for the 2-seat version of PhotoRAW is a tempting proposition, but the photo processing tools themselves are inconsistent and lacking in several key areas. It's frustrating, because if On1 spent a bit of time looking again at the basics, i.e. that demosaicing engine, and reimagined things like the masking workflow, this really would be a Lightroom killer. For now, PhotoRAW remains what it's always been, a potential alternative to Adobe that keeps tripping over its own shoelaces. And that, my friends, will do us for this in-depth review of On1 PhotoRAW 2025. Do you own it? Have you owned PhotoRAW in the past? If so, what would tempt you back into the On1 fold? Do let me know in the comments section below. If you got value from this content, then do please hit the old like button and consider subscribing for more photo, video, and drone-related content from me. Till the next time, guys. Ta-ta.